But if you answer the wrong way, you can hand them the evidence they need against you. And the scary part is you can do it before they ever read you your rights. Hit subscribe right now because what I'm about to show you could keep your own words from being used to trap you. Tap like 2 so you can find this again fast when you actually need it during a real stop. Here's what you're about to learn, and you need every part of it. You'll hear the first sentence you should use when an officer starts fishing for admissions. You'll learn the one question that tells you if the stop is really over. You'll get the exact line that blocks consent searches before they start. And you'll hear the final sentence that shuts down deeper questioning when the pressure turns up. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the pattern is always the same. The officer sounds calm. The driver tries to be helpful. Then one small answer becomes probable cause, meaning a legal excuse to dig deeper. Here's the reality. Your mouth can turn a warning into a search into cuffs, and cuffs into charges you could have avoided. When you get pulled over, your brain wants to fix the moment fast. So you talk, you explain, you joke, you say you're in a hurry, you say you had one drink, you say your cousin left that bag in the back, you say you've got nothing to hide. That feels normal. It feels honest. It feels human. But that is exactly why it's dangerous. Most people have no idea that roadside questions are often built to get you to volunteer facts the officer did not have 1 minute earlier. And once you say it, you can't unsay it. Listen closely because this is critical. You do have to handle the stop calmly. You do have to give basic driving documents, but you do not have to help build the case against yourself. So the first move is simple, and you need to memorize it before you ever need it. When the officer asks where you're coming from, where you're going, whether you've been drinking, or whether there's anything illegal in the car, or whether you want to clear this up by being honest, you do not start telling your life story. You keep it tight, you keep it calm, you keep it legal. Here's exactly what you say. Officer, here are my license, registration, and insurance. I choose to remain silent. Word for word. Memorize that line. Let me show you exactly why this works. You're giving the basic documents you legally need to hand over as a driver, but you're not feeding the fishing trip. Bad way. Most drivers say, I'm just being honest. I only had 2 beers, or that's my friend's stuff, not mine. Then the officer now has fresh facts to investigate, test, search, and build on. Good way. Smart drivers say, Officer, here are my license, registration, and insurance. I choose to remain silent. Then the officer gets your documents, but not your confession. This is 100% legal. And no, you do not have to wait for magic words like, you have the right to remain silent. That warning usually comes later, not at the start of a normal traffic stop. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. In Berkham v. McCarty, the court said roadside traffic stop questioning usually does not count as full custody yet. Plain English? The officer can ask questions before giving Miranda warnings. That means if you wait for a warning before protecting yourself, you're already behind. Your safest move is to say less, not more. There is one limit you need to know. In some places, you may have to identify yourself if the law requires it during a lawful stop. Hebel v. 6th. Judicial district is the case people talk about here. Plain English? If the law says you must give your name during a lawful detention, you can be required to do that. As a driver, you're already handing over your license and documents anyway, but that does not mean you have to answer every follow-up question about your night, your friends, your trunk, or your plans. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it helps show you did not volunteer extra statements. You stayed respectful, you stayed calm, you gave what was required, and you stopped there. Watch what happens when you do that. The officer now has to work with what they actually saw, not with what you nervously donated. Have you ever felt pressure to explain yourself during a stop? Drop a comment below, because if you've been there, you already know how fast your mouth wants to run. Now let's talk about the moment officers use all the time after the first questions fail. They shift the stop sideways, they hand back your documents, they pause, then they say, hey, one more thing, or mind if I ask you something real quick? This is where people get trapped because they think the stop is over, but they still act like they have to stand there and answer. You need one sentence ready for that moment. You look at the officer and say this, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Those exact words. Keep your tone flat. Not rude, not shaky, just clear. Let me show you exactly why this matters. That question forces the moment into the open. Either the officer says you're free to go, or the officer says you're still being detained. Both answers tell you something huge, bad way. Most drivers say, yeah, sure, what's up? Then the stop stretches into a whole new interview. You stay there, giving away more time and more information. Good way. Smart drivers say, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Then the officer has to either end the contact or explain why you're still being held. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. A traffic stop is supposed to be tied to the reason you got stopped. That means license check, registration, warrants, ticket or warning, and basic safety stuff. It is not supposed to become a free 20-minute fishing trip just because the officer feels curious. In Rodriguez versus United States, the Supreme Court said, police cannot drag out a stop longer than needed for the traffic job, unless they have separate reasonable suspicion. Plain English? Once the traffic mission is done, they can't just keep you there. They can't hunt for something else without a real reason. That does not mean every extra second is illegal. It means your question helps pin down whether the stop is still lawful or just drifting. And yes, there's another reason this line matters. In Ohio versus Robinette, the court said something critical. Officers do not have to tell you that you're free to go before asking for consent to search. Plain English, you cannot count on the officer to announce, "Good news, you can leave now." You have to ask. That one question protects your time, your freedom, and your record of what happened. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it changes the whole mood. It tells the officer, you know the stop has limits. It tells the camera you're not volunteering for extra questioning, and it keeps you from getting tricked by friendly small talk after the real stop should be ending. Watch what happens when you ask it calmly. The officer often has to make a clean choice instead of keeping you in that gray zone. The third tactic is the one that saves people from the biggest mistake on the road. This is the search trap. The officer says, if you've got nothing to hide, you don't mind if I take a quick look, right? Or maybe it sounds softer. You seem like a good person. Just let me clear this up. That is not small talk. That is a request for consent. And consent is powerful. If you say yes, you can destroy a huge legal argument before your lawyer ever gets the case. So your line has to be short and exact. Here's exactly what you say. Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Word for word. Then stop talking. Don't explain why. Don't joke. Don't say unless you really need to. Just say the line and go quiet. Bad way. Most drivers say, I guess that's fine. I've got nothing to hide. Then the officer searches and finds something. Good way. Smart drivers say, Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Then, if they search anyway, your refusal is on the record. This is 100% legal. You're not required to make the officer's job easier. In Schneckloth versus Bustamante, the Supreme Court said, consent can count as voluntary based on the full situation, even if the person was never told they had the right to refuse. Plain English? The officer does not have to give you a mini class on your rights. That is why your own words matter so much. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection. Now I need to be real with you. Refusing consent does not guarantee the officer will walk away. If they claim they smell something or see contraband, they may search anyway. But your refusal still matters. A lot. It tells the camera you did not agree. It tells your lawyer what happened. It tells the court the search was not based on permission. If you sound unsure, the record gets messy. If you sound clear, the record gets stronger. 90% of drivers don't know what's coming next. Now we hit the moment this whole video is really about. If the stop turns into real accusation or custodial questioning, you need your strongest line. You say this, I am invoking my right to remain silent. I want a lawyer. Those exact words. Miranda v. Arizona and Edwards v. Arizona say once you clearly ask for a lawyer, police are not supposed to keep pushing. Let's tie this together with the law. Berkemer, Rodriguez, Schneckloth, and Robinette provide the legal foundation. Now let me walk you through a real roadside scene. You get pulled over at night for speeding. The officer asks where you're coming from. The wrong way, you explain everything and consent to a search. The right way, you hand over documents, remain silent, ask if you're free to leave, and refuse the search. Next week, I'm revealing what to say when cops claim they smell weed. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it. So, lock these lines into your head right now. Give documents, stay silent, ask if free, refuse consent, and call for a lawyer. Smash like, drop a comment, stay sharp, stay calm, and protect your own mouth before it protects the case against you.